All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here in a second. My name is Michael. I'm the newest intern at Arist. Super excited to be here. I'm also our co-founder and CEO. So really excited to be with you all today. I'm going to pass it over to you all for quick intros, and we'll dive in.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Sims, and I'm the Executive Director of Learning Operations and Strategy at Novartis. Been at Novartis 16 years, and in my current role, I have the privilege of leading an operations team. They are experts in their field. And I'm not just saying that because a few of them are here in the front row, but they are truly experts at operationalizing our onboarding programs for sales training, curriculum development and design, learning technology and measurement, and project management. So thrilled to be here and share our experiences with you today.
Hi. My name is Greg Dracos. I work for Moderna, and I'm a Senior Director of Learning Innovation and Learner Experience. So my role is just looking across the enterprise for how do we make sure that we use, the latest, the best tools that enhance the learner experience, and we have, the best technology for the right content for the right people at any time.
Terrific. We have a super fun panel for you all today. We have a lot to cover in a pretty short period of time. So before we dive in, a few quick questions. Who here, by show of hands, has built a course start to finish using AI in the past few months? Okay, about half of you. Who here has ever tried a text message or a Teams-based course? Course delivered fully in the flow of work. The Novartis team? Okay, great. Awesome. Terrific. Anybody else? One more person. Okay, awesome. And out of curiosity, by show of hands, how long does it take to build experiences today, start to finish, from creation to delivery to MLR, et cetera? Like over 6 weeks for anybody? End-to-end creation? Raise your hand if it's over 6 weeks. Okay, most of you. Raise your hand if it's under 3 weeks for anyone. One person. That's awesome. Okay, terrific. So today we're going to cover a few core topics. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about the importance of learning in the flow of work. And also, we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on speed, right? We live in an incredibly dynamic world. Things are changing very quickly. And we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on how we can use AI and learning in the flow of work to move meaningfully faster. So to start, just to share some quick context, as I mentioned, my name is Michael. I'm our co-founder and CEO. Arist, for the past 5 years, has been the fastest growing AI and learning in the flow of work enablement company on the planet. We were OpenAI's first learning and enablement partner back in 2020, and we've been obsessed with this question of how do you deliver the right learning and enablement to the right people at the right place at the right time using AI and using tools like Slack, Teams, and text message. So that's sort of the quick context. I want to start sort of at the very beginning. When I started working with both of you about 3 years ago. And when we started working together, the idea of delivering learning via text message or Teams chat was completely insane. So I want to understand, what were the problems that you were trying to solve, and why did you initially sort of consider learning in the flow of work? At least I'll start with you.
Sure. So 3 years ago, it was a totally crazy idea. And for several reasons. First of all, our sales teams were just getting corporate cell phones. So mobile learning really hadn't resonated. They did have iPads, right? So a lot of things were mobile enabled at Novartis, but the idea of pushing out learning in a mobile device for learning purposes just was unheard of. So when we heard that the sales teams were getting corporate cell phones, my boss came to me and said, we have to be a part of this. We have to have our training on those phones when they get them in their hand. So that was our mission. We started to strategize about what could that look like? What problems were we trying to solve? Where's the gap where this type of learning could fill the need? And really, when you look at a lot of the trainings that we have, and we have a fantastic training team that delivers training on a variety of different topics, right? Whether it's product training, skills training, leadership training, where is that continuous learning happening? Where's that red thread that's tying together when a rep comes out of a sales meeting or a pocket meeting and they're learning new content? How do we know that they are using that content? They're remembering that content when they should remember it, and they're able to deliver a more powerful message to their customers. So that was our strategy of why we wanted to use it. The challenge that we had that we needed to get past first was getting everybody to use their cell phones. So if anybody is familiar with rolling out new technology or a cell phone, specifically when your teams had been using a bring your own mobile technology, getting them to shut those phones off and use a corporate cell phone was a huge challenge. So took some time to get everybody to up in speed and using their phones, but partnering with our commercial ops team, we were able to get something stood up. And when those phones were ready, we were able to push out our first program. So that was the beginning of how we got started and what our thought process was. So turn it over to you.
Great. Crazy idea, but it makes a lot of sense. When you think about the Holy Grail, which is how do you bring, learning closer to the flow of work? For us, at least, the flow of work is Microsoft Teams. That's where people are. That's where people, communicate with each other. That's where they bring up documents. And the magic of Teams is that, it's on your computer, but it's also on your phone. So I didn't look at text message, SMS messaging. I looked at Teams. That's what I was laser focused on. And it's not just the mobile aspect of it, because, of course, it makes perfect sense for field sales, they're out on the road. But, who cares? I mean, you could be in the office. You could be just moving around the office, or you could be just sitting on your desk. Still, you probably look at that phone 100 times a day, right? So it makes perfect sense. I was never a huge fan of mobile learning because, I've been around for a while and I've seen it fail, how people have tried, let's create these courses and people are going to take them, on the bus, during their commute. No, nobody does that. But when it comes to short text messaging, when it comes to really quick reviewing something, there's no better way than doing it on your phone or through a chat on Microsoft Teams. So that's what I was focused on.
Yeah, it's interesting. A stat that we think about often is that people check their LMS once every 6 weeks. People check Teams and text messages once every 6 minutes. You all will likely check your phones multiple times during this session, right? And it's and it's just as a result of that, the adoption rates are dramatically higher. I think you all have both, just by virtue of delivering learning where people are. I mean, just on ignoring all the speed benefits, everything else, have both seen incredibly high engagement, adoption, satisfaction, orders of magnitude higher than e-learning benchmarks. So it's been I think just meeting people where they are makes a huge difference. Out of curiosity, so when you all think about sort of getting internal buy-in, right? Because as we mentioned, right, this idea of delivering learning via text message or Teams chat was pretty crazy, right? How did you all get buy-in from teams, especially when, as an industry, we've been creating and delivering learning using PowerPoints and e-learning modules for 20 years, right? So it's a massive shift. How did you all, and Lisa, I want to start with you. How did you sort of get that buy-in and change manage internally?
Yes, and let me just start by saying we are using SMS capabilities only right now with Arist. So, and we chose that route for reasons you had just said, Michael, right? So everybody has their phone. There was no training on how to use text messaging. We're all using it many times a day. So that was the path that we took. Now, we did have some challenges that we knew that we had to get past because this was a completely different way of pushing learning to our learners that, never been done before. And what we did first was we had to socialize the idea with my boss, his peers, get leadership buy-in, right? That was crucial just to get out of the gate with this, right? This was something that a lot of people just didn't understand. And the first reaction that we received from the sales leaders was, this is intrusive. We don't want people texting all day, right? We want people engaging with their customers. And we want people just, not learning. We had the craziest conversations around this because no one could envision what we were truly trying to accomplish using the cell phone. And what we really had to do was pick one of our sales training teams. We piloted and we built a very successful program. And once we had the feedback to show, and even during the pilot of that program, we brought in sales leadership. And we said, this is what we're trying to do. And once they saw with their own eyes and they had the experience on their own phone, that they were able to say, oh, okay, this is what you're trying to do. We were envisioning something completely different. This was going to be just like an e-learning module on their phone. And that's not what it was. We were going to be delivering bite-sized learning, pull-through training to people, something that was not going to be interfering with their day-to-day activities, something that if they're sitting in an office, right, that go and answer a few questions. Most of our bite-sized learning and our knowledge checks that we do push out are about 5 multiple choice questions. So they can answer all of them at one time. they can do it over a course of a week. So it's not something that is overbearing to them. So that was one thing that we wanted to make very clear and make sure that leadership understood that this is truly in the flow of work and that the response rate was incredibly high. And once the field understood what we were doing and saw how easy it was, they're probably texting their counterparts more than they're actually on Arist, right? So this was not something that was going to be a big lift for them. And the response was fantastic because we made sure the content tied to the event they just came out of. So that learning they just learned in their national meeting, that reinforcement training is now going on by answering a few questions.
For us, it was quite the opposite. We are a smaller, very future-forward organization. Everybody got it right away, what we were trying to do, and it made sense for everybody. I was probably the biggest barrier, just as the protector of the technology and making sure that we use it the right way so that, you have one chance, right? And, we don't want people to perceive that as spamming or everybody wants to use it and somehow, we end up with, multiple things going out via messages and people just learn to ignore it, So no issues with adoption. It was more, how do we roll it out so we do it right? People like it, and we sustain that, satisfaction throughout time, and we don't mess it up. Beyond the cybersecurity checks that we needed to do at the beginning to connect it to Microsoft Teams, there was no pushback from anywhere in the organization.
Yeah. Quick question on that. And I think one of the most common concerns that people have with any new tool, right, is this going to be like a 6 to 9 month deployment process? Is this just going to destroy my IT team's bandwidth for a while? At Arist, we're kind of obsessed with this notion of Arist should be invisible, right, to learners, right? Learners should not know that Arist exists. It should exist in the background. It should be fully embedded into existing tools. But there's still sort of concerns about is this going to take up a bunch of implementation time? What did implementation look like for both of you, and what was it faster than you expected, slower than you expected? And at least I'm curious to start with you in terms of what that process looked like.
So implementation, we had some setup that we had to do, right? We took a lot of time in the beginning while the cell phone uptake was happening to really strategize about how we were going to do it operationally and how were we going to support this, right? We knew that we needed to do something fast because, again, the mission was as soon as those phones were in hands, we needed to have a training that was meaningful to the learners there. So we spent a lot of time strategizing what that looked like. But in the meantime, we also had to think about, if this works, how do we scale? What does that look like? How do we manage this? So we had to take a lot of time to figure that out as a team on how we were going to leverage our skills that we had on the team. And then, of course, if it doesn't work, we need to fail fast and move on. And we need to be able to tell that story about why we did what we did. But as luck would have it, we did have success with our first one. So then it became another challenge of, okay, now this is gaining traction. The VPs are happy with what they see. They're sharing their success stories amongst themselves. And now people want to get on the bandwagon. What do we do about this? How do we manage text messaging across product, skills, leadership, market access training when we know there's also crossover in those groups? How are we not texting people at the same time and starting to bombard them with some of this texting? We don't want to do that. That just defeats the entire purpose of what we were trying to accomplish. So we set up multiple channels for our training, and we labeled them as such so that when those text messages came up on the phone, just like if anybody gets, let's just say, a text message from J. Crew or anybody who constantly, spams you with some texting, and you can label that as J. Crew, or it comes across as a number or something like that, right? We made sure that all of our text messages were branded for Novartis, so it was very easy for the learner to see, this is a Novartis training. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to take it. I know what this is, getting them used to seeing it on their phone. We also branded leadership training as leadership. We branded onboarding, and I'll talk about that in a minute, also as a separate channel, so that when these text messages came through, if an immunology rep was a leader as well as obviously getting some TA information, they would see it was coming from 2 different channels for 2 different reasons. So we had to think through that strategy. And then as this scaled and ramped up, how do we manage all of the volume of programs that are coming through? And then it morphed into from knowledge checks to communications. We had sales leaders say, I just want to create a video and send this out to my team. Can you guys send this through a text? So then we started to become the communication channel as well. And great stuff. We're able to do that very easily, send a video link out, and it plays within Arist. So it's not taking them anywhere else. So there's no technology that needs to be plugged in. Fantastic. But it now just changed, and we are constantly having to challenge the strategy and figure out how do we continuously scale this? And do we need to now look to our commercial ops team for support and kind of divide up the work and just keep what's training? So I know that was a lot, but there was a lot. Once this really took off, it really challenged my team, and we had to come up with solutions in order to support the various channels that we send out training in.
So our experience with Microsoft Teams, right? We have not enabled text messaging through SMS. The actual implementation was just seamless. There's a native app on Microsoft Teams. It was just a matter of enabling that. You can install it for everybody in the background, so it's very seamless. I would say it probably took like a month or so for our own internal cybersecurity, checks and all that. But the actual implementation, I was actually on the call when we enabled it. It was like 35 minutes, just to enable it and test it. But to follow your line of thinking about how do you scale it after that, right? For me, it was more about making sure that we have a consistent personality that comes through those messages. And I do like that Arist allows you to, white label, you never see Arist anywhere. In our case, Moderna University is our learning and development organization. So we just labeled it Moderna University Bot. And you basically get a message on Teams from Moderna University Bot, with our logo and our icon and everything. So it was, how do you make sure that this bot has a personality, right? And when you get a message from that bot, it's consistent, right? And it's fun and it's engaging, and it sends you emojis and tries to keep it like interesting and, giving it a voice. How do you include graphics and things like that to just make sure that it's fun? And I think we were successful. But how do you scale beyond that when multiple people are trying to do multiple things within the same platform? Is really setting up those guiding principles. And I'm in the process of actually documenting that. Okay, what's the voice of the Moderna University Bot?
Yeah.
Right. And, does it make jokes? Does it make, how do you do that? We're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a perfect segue. I think, one of the things that I'd love to learn about is what are the use cases that you all are most proud of? And where is this a fit and where is this not a fit, right? Because I think one of the core questions that sort of we get is, can I use this? We've seen clients use this for everything from like replacing a lot of their disease state e-learnings and webinars, all the way to communications and surveys and having this be a rapid response tool. And so I'm curious, what are the use cases and data points that you all are most proud of? And what are the use cases you're also most excited about as well? Lisa, we'll start with you.
So I have to say, we're excited about the entire program. We were just so surprised at the uptake and how positive the feedback has been from the field as well as from leadership. Just to give you an idea of the programs that we've done thus far. So all of 2024, we did about 150 programs, and we reached about 35,000 learners last year. So far this year in 2025, we have launched 150 programs and reached over 35,000 learners. So we are in course this year to double what we did last year. So the uptake has been tremendous. We focus on 3 areas in training, as I mentioned before. So our knowledge checks, the communications, and also surveys. So we have found that sending out surveys, particularly to managers after our new hire training, we wait 90 days and we send out a survey to the managers asking if they see the impact of what that new hire has done on what the training has made an impact in the field with their new hires. And that we find is such a simple way to get that information, that survey in front of managers. Before we started doing it in Arist, our response rate from the managers was like 10%. It was very low and it was very hard to get to that level, what we call L3 data, right? We want to see what that impact is in the field. When we started sending out the manager survey through Arist, it was an immediate uptake because it was 5 questions. They could answer very quickly, give their thoughts and feedback, and we're now getting much more robust data from the managers, which is allowing us to make either changes in the program or just giving us food for thought for the next time. So that we're very proud of, that we now have those data points that we can use.
We're still pretty early in our journey, but we have found some really fun use cases. We haven't done field training yet, but what we have done is things like tagging into an existing program for reinforcement. So I'll give you an example. We have a program on change agility, right? And it's a live course. Following the course, you could have 5 days of micro learning just to make sure that you digest the content and you understand the content. The other really interesting use case is employee onboarding. So employee onboarding for us is a 3-day program, right? It's repeatable. It's the same every time. You have the same kind of schedule on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Well, it makes perfect sense to set up micro-learning to go along with it, which could also include communications and could include surveys. So, good morning. Welcome to your onboarding. Today is Monday, right? Today we're going to cover A, B, C, D. And then later on, hey, which one was your favorite speaker? Let me give you a multiple choice on 3 things that we learned today, And it's repeatable. You just turn it on every time you have onboarding and it just goes out automatically. It enhances the onboarding experience. Another thing that we used it for that I'm very proud of is book clubs. So we did this, we have this concept at Moderna called ambient learning, which is all about how do we embed learning in different parts of the employee experience so that, we strengthen our employee culture, right? And our learning culture. So beyond courses and, seminars and things like that, we have things like book clubs and learning circles and, ways for people to come together and learn from each other. And having micro-learning through an Microsoft Teams bot go out along with a book club, it was amazing. So, people get together, they discuss a book, and then, you can feed a summary of that book into Arist. You can create multiple choice questions. And then for, 2 weeks, let's say, you could be sending something every day to check people's understanding and how much they like that book, and then come back together in person and discuss it. There's way more. Those are the use cases that I could find that I wasn't expecting to find, but it makes perfect sense for micro-learning.
Yeah, love it.
Add on one thing. So just onboarding, when you said that, I know I wanted to come back to touch on that. So we found success with our onboarding program as well. And for our sales training, our new hire program, it is a phase 1 to phase 2 program. So we have a virtual learning, self-driven, that's 4 weeks. And then we also have a 1 week in person where we do fly in everyone to various locations, either New Jersey, where our headquarters is, or someplace else. And what we found is pushing out logistics to people through Arist and getting them prepared for what's coming, especially if they have a few weeks before they are coming into training, giving them that link to the company and knowing that, hey, we know you're out there. Here's what you can expect. Here's what we need you to do, right? And having that channel of communication open for our new hires has been just changing. Plus, it also gets them used to using Arist because it's something that's going to continue once they get out of new hire training. So we found that the sooner we get to people and get them used to using the technology, the more successful they are in embracing it once they get out of new hire training.
I love that. Yeah.
One more. So one more. We're actually going to be taking the entire company through some skills training that we selected for core future readiness skills. And we will be using microlearning through Arist to take everybody through that at the same time. So think about the entire company learning about learning agility at the same time, starting on Monday, right? And the way that we will deploy it is we send out a message to everybody that says, hey, on Monday, we're going to start a journey for the entire week on exploring learning agility. It will involve receiving messages for 5 days. It's going to take you about 5 minutes a day. Will you join us? They respond yes, and we auto-enroll them to start on Monday, right? And we envision that this is going to do miracles for our culture, having everybody doing it at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. That's been one of our most common use cases, right? It's like, today, the reality is that all of you have massive teams, right, that you need to educate and train. And unfortunately, the only ways that we have had historically to reliably reach people are sending an email, right? Or getting everybody to go to a webinar, right? And usually what we found historically is that if you send somebody an email with a link to a survey or a link to an e-learning, or if you send somebody to a webinar, the adoption and completion rates are usually less than 10%, right? Like if you look at your data, right, it's just very difficult to get busy people to click on a link or go to a session, even if it's mandatory. We have clients with mandatory training completion rates of like 40%, right? Before Arist, after Arist, it's like 99, but right. And I think there's a lot of magic in just bringing learning directly to people as a result, right? And like, I think for both of you, like adoption and engagement rates have been like well north of 70 or 80%, even for fully optional programs. So it's just been insane, One thing that I want to talk about is speed. So you all have both mentioned some pretty incredible stats, right? I think launching 150 programs in 6 months to 35,000 people is incredible. You've also done it with a small but mighty team, many of which are in the room today, right? How did you all do that? And how does microlearning and learning in the flow of work in AI change the speed at which you can deliver programs, right? Because it seems to be like, it seems like you all are doing the work of a team that's 10 times your size.
Yes, they are small but mighty, and I'm very fortunate to have a team that does put through that effort and help us be successful. But it's not just us as well. So we do partner with our product trainers. We partner with our skills trainers. We bring everybody around the table. It's very important that not only sales leadership buys into it, but the rest of our L&D team as well, right? So we all had to up our skills and our knowledge around this new technology and what it was going to do to help our learners. So it was definitely a group effort. And once we were all around the table and we were familiar with Arist and we saw the success of Arist, it became easier and quicker and faster for us to get to what we really wanted to achieve for our learners. So we would take content that was already MLR approved, and we could run it through Arist and create the knowledge checks very quickly. And again, once we understood and we anticipated coming out of certain meetings or certain workshops that the training teams were being held, we knew there was going to be an Arist course following it. So that was part of the strategy that we all communicated, and so we were all a part of. So the process became much faster in getting things out to our learners. And in terms of the AI capabilities, so we do use, and we are very thankful for, the image generation that you have provided us. And I also want to say, just to preface this, Arist has been a wonderful partner. And we have had growing pains. We started incredibly small, and we now have scaled up quite dramatically. And through that process, we've made many recommendations to your team, and we work very closely with their team in order to get a lot of things that we feel we need to bring to our learners. And you guys have been incredibly receptive and have enabled features for us. And the image generation one is one that also helped change the game for us, because we can now just brand our text messages the way we need to with approved logos and approved things that are just automatic. It's in the library that Arist approves for us. And to your point, too, that you made before, making sure that it's branded and engaging and things that people recognize and they want to be a part of is so important. Otherwise, it's a text message, right? You really have to put thought into how this is going to land on your learners to make them engage with it. But say all that speed is all about working as a team, having that right mission, the goal, you know what you want to achieve, and you're able to set it up in advance and then make it run.
So quick question, Greg, before I pass it over to you. How long would you say start to finish from having a need in the business to creating content, creating all the lessons, all the knowledge checks, all of the images and infographics, and then delivering it to learners? What is that cycle time today for an average experience?
It depends on the request, but if we already have the content available and approved, we're talking about a couple days, if that. So it is incredibly fast to get that information out. So again, a game changer. We had learning curves that we had to get through in the very beginning, but now we can operate at a very high rate and just be very efficient with sending out the text messages.
That's awesome. Greg, I want to pass it over to you. You all are, as you mentioned, launching a company-wide AI upskilling program and a future skills program, start to finish in a very, very short period of time. I'm curious, like, what is the, like, same question to you, right? What is the timeline now with AI that you know for creating and delivering courses to people, and how have you seen AI change the way that you all work? Moderna has especially been sort of, leading in many ways on the AI front. So curious to understand.
I mean, we use AI in everything we do regardless.
Yeah.
So, small and mighty team, it would never take way too long because we always have, AI by our side. And culturally, this is something that is expected in our organization. Microlearning through Arist is days. The actual building something, it's hours, right?
Yeah.
I think where it's taking a little bit longer than hours is I want to pilot everything, right?
Yeah.
I want to have people actually take it and tell me what they think, especially that personality aspect. Hey, does this come across as engaging and friendly? Is there something I want to, change? Graphics, making sure, you have the right graphics, the right color, those things too. But building the content is hours, right? And as an organization that is very comfortable with AI and expects people to produce much more than they would have by themselves because you are using AI, it would be stupid not to be using tools that help you achieve that. I mean, I would just say that. Micro-learning with Arist makes perfect sense. We're going all in. Video generation with Synthesia makes perfect sense. We're going all in with that too. The days when you had, an instructional designer putting together outlines and storyboards and running it by SMEs and doing, who has time for this right now? We don't. I don't know about other organizations, but we don't have time for that. We move way too fast. And we just don't have those massive training teams to build things and test them out with SMEs, etc.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because historically, that cycle of creation and delivery, right, was I think for many of you all in the room, right, it is still a very long time, right? It sometimes takes 4 to 6 weeks, and it's interesting that from our point of view, and we were talking about this before the session briefly. The number one value of AI is speed, right? Content quality, I think, is going to be more or less the same. I think in many cases, content quality with AI is starting to get even better than content quality sort of manually. But speed is the number one thing, right? And I think it's what's going to start happening is that if your organization can't turn around learning in a few hours or a few days, right, you're going to be in trouble because that's going to become the expectation for executives and for leaders, right? Especially one of the things that we think about often is that every single day, if there's a new competitive product, right, every single day that your reps are not trained on that competitive product and how to, sell against it is the day that they are losing deals, right, or losing HCP engagement to your competitors, right? We're seeing this very meaningfully with with some major, there's in the life sciences industry, there's a few major sort of competitive dynamics currently, right? And it's real, right? If you can't get info to people fast, you lose, right?
And I would say that in our industry, we all love to hate, all the legal reviews and all the PMRT approvals and all that stuff. But in the case of microlearning, that gives you already approved content that you can just feed it into AI and get really, really good content because, it's pretty defined what you're using as your source data.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to, let's take a look at time here. We have probably another 10 minutes of discussion, and would love to pass it over to you all for questions. Sort of one of the final questions that I want to try about is measuring impact, right? I think you all have both done an incredible job of measuring impact, both on sort of some fundamental metrics, right? Like adoption, engagement, completion, learner and admin satisfaction, right? But also I think you all have both had some really creative ways of measuring impact in terms of speed, et cetera. So I'm curious to understand, especially given that bringing in AI and bringing in learning the flow of work is a massive transformation, how have you all demonstrated impact internally and sort of told that story? And Lisa, we'd love to start with you.
Yeah, so we're very passionate about measurement at Novartis. That has been at the forefront of our training organization now for about 3 years. And we have built very robust dashboards and metrics capturing everything from new hire training, feedback, quantitative and qualitative, as well as any workshops and other learnings that we have. So we are very measurement minded. Anything that goes out needs to be measured. Otherwise, how do we even know that it works? What's the point of doing this anymore? So same's held true with Arist. And when it comes to speed, right, how do you measure speed? It's not really about the speed. We know we're doing it faster. We can tell people we're doing it faster. But it's really about getting the information out to the field and seeing that they are getting that information when they need it. And we have qualitative feedback from our learners telling us that they were able, before they walked into the doctor's office, to go back into Arist and review some of the knowledge checks that they took and the information that's there to remind them of what they wanted to say to the HCP. So that reinforcement, we have heard that that's happening. So we have that data that we do share upwards to say, this is resonating with your learners. We are turning things around quickly. We are building the right content at the right time, giving it to the reps when they need it. So we have dashboards and analytics that we have developed. We do export it. We do blend it in with the rest of our data that we have in our dashboards to give a complete picture of all of our learners and how our learners are doing and what is working and what's not working. So we can give that feedback both to our trainers as well as upwards to sales leadership.
I think there's a really critical point there, which is that, AI by itself is not, it's necessary but not sufficient, right?
Correct.
Right,
Yes.
because I think what we find is that you can build the world's most perfect course, right? You can translate it using AI, you can personalize it using AI, you can have like literally the most perfect experience for every single individual. But if they have to go through 20 clicks to get to the right course in the LMS or CMS, they're not going to access it. And the whole benefit of speed is going to go away because you're going to spend weeks getting people to just attend that training, right? So
Exactly. I mean, how many times have you picked up your phone and said, I got a text from somebody with information that I know I need.
Yeah.
And you just go through and you find it, search for it, and there it is. It's the same thing with Arist. Our reps are able to go back through their text messages and find, where was that learning? I need this piece of information that was there because I'm going to have that conversation with my customer. So we've received that feedback many times, and that's just, the icing on the cake right there. We know that we're doing our job. We know we're making an impact because it is positively affecting the way that they're talking to their customers.
that's awesome.
We're early on our journey. Our use cases are kind of limited still, but I'm measuring two things. I'm looking at engagement. That's extremely important for me because if we fail on engagement, then we can't use this anymore, right? People perceive it as spam. They're not going to open up the messages. Who cares? So engagement is very, very important to me. The other thing that is very important to me is this a force multiplier for my team? Am I able to do substantially more than I was able to do before? And am I responding to the needs of the business in a nice way, right? Using this technology, and in both regards, we're doing great. Still very early. I do want to measure more. I want to start measuring. A lot of we ask a question at the beginning of everything. Kind of gauge where you are right now, and then I ask them again at the very end. So we're doing this with all the future-ready skills that we're going to be launching. One of them, for example, is AI readiness. But we're asking people to do very specific things like connect ChatGPT to your Outlook. Have you done this? Today, we're going to teach you how to do this. Have you done this?
Yes.
Right? So I'm starting to measure some of that as well. But we will get to a point where, you very strategically asking questions and you're getting a very simple answer back, and then you can look at the answers in aggregate, which is amazing when you think about it. Just being able to survey the entire organization just like that and get an answer from the actual person of whether they understand something or whether they did it or not. You're able to do that because people respond to you rather than going and completing a survey. So huge potential.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a really critical point, right? The frequency of data capture, I think, is very different, right? I think the challenge is that if you're delivering like a webinar or a live session or an e-learning, right, you're only getting one point of data about where people are understanding or not understanding concepts, right? I think one of the things that we've been really excited about is that, when you break learning down into bite-sized chunks and you're interacting with learners every single day, you get a very granular sense of what people understand and don't understand. So we've had clients be like, hey, they've started using learning data as a business intelligence tool, right? Because they can say, hey, we're noticing that our reps in Northern California focused on this set of clients are struggling with this specific concept or case study. It can reinforce automatically.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that is feedback we also give to our trainers. So if we notice through any of the knowledge checks that a question is being missed multiple times, we know that's an area of reinforcement that's needed. So having those data points as well to go back and saying specifically, you guys may need to focus on this. Maybe you need to go back and look at your training materials. If we need to change the Arist knowledge check, what's going on here? It just generates a conversation and collaboration with the rest of the team to make sure that the trainings that we're pushing out are the right trainings and the right reinforcement that was needed.
That's awesome. So one last question for you all before we pass it over to the audience. If you had one piece of advice to somebody who is very interested in AI and learning the flow of work, but is maybe scared of or unsure of where to start, what would you recommend? And Greg, I'm going to start with you.
Well, obviously try it, right? I mean, you will never know unless you try. You can debate it all you want with anybody you want, but unless you actually try it, you're not going to get there. My advice is think about what your flow of work is. It probably varies in each organization. For us, flow of work is Microsoft Teams and it's ChatGPT. That's where people spend most of their time during the day. I want to bring learning right there. For somebody else, it's something different, right? So think about your flow of work. What does that look like? And what tools and what mechanisms do you have to bring the right learning in that flow of work at the right time? It's been the holy grail forever. It's actually very doable right now, with all the technology that we have and the tools that we have that just plug in and play. It's very doable. We are reevaluating our learning technology infrastructure because what we have and what people were selling us all these years, it's just not where people go to consume learning, So that's my advice. Think about what your flow of work is and think about how to put learning there because it's very doable. Try it.
For those of you who are interested in using text messaging, the SMS format, your strategy and your approach is just critical. It does need to be thought through in what learners you want to reach and what that program is going to look like. Once you have a strategy, the goals, right, what's going to be the tactics, the cadence, right, all of those details that you need to think through that are incredibly important for a text message program to be successful, then get your sales leaders to buy into it. Having them come along with the journey with you and being a part of it, whether that's through a pilot program, whether that's a demonstration to sales leadership, but getting the platform in front of people and telling the story, what it is that you want to accomplish, how this is going to change learning for your sales teams is critical. And once they see it, they visualize what this is, maybe be part of a pilot, get the feedback from that. The feedback is critical as well because the first thing they're going to say is, well, how did my learners feel about this? Or how did my reps? What did my reps do differently? They want to see the scores, and they're salespeople, right? As soon as something goes well, they go into competitive mode. So then we started building leaderboards and we started doing all these other things, right? And it just took off. So my advice, have a strategy, be very focused in your approach. Don't try to boil the ocean. Try to do it very strategically. Pick a brand, pick skills that you want to reinforce. get it in front of your sales leadership team to get their buy-in, socialize it with your training organization, and then do it. You have to just go out, work with Arist, and just do it and see how it goes.
Love it. Folks, a round of applause for Lisa and Greg. So we have about 15 minutes for audience Q&A. So any questions for Lisa and Greg?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, guys, Lisa, Greg, Michael. Appreciate this. Is really informative. I have a question, and I'm going to make it centric to field stakeholders and learners. So field sales, medical, maybe reimbursement, and maybe a two-part question is when we think about buy-in from the field, so shifting that culture to learning to a mobile platform. Two-part question. One is, for Novartis, if you did not shift away from a bring your own device model from an enterprise perspective, do you think you would have received the buy-in, and what challenges might you have hit? Question for you would be, do you have clients who do use this model in a bring your own device model? Because I know I've hit some headwinds in the past with past experiences with that. And then I want to know more about teams and getting the field to adopt utilization of teams, because that seems to be a struggle where I've worked in the past.
So great questions. And the bring your own mobile versus the Novartis device. So that was not from training, right? We did not initiate that decision. That came from much higher up. And it was originally initiated, I think, somewhere on the commercial operations side. So for their own purposes. Would it have changed Arist? Would we have gone this route had the corporate phones not come into play? I don't know, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that eventually, at some point, we probably would have explored it to see what was possible. But up until the corporate phones, because we knew from a IT infrastructure and mobility standpoint and privacy and everything that we had to go through to get the corporate phones ready for training, I don't know if we could have done that on the BY because we didn't examine that. So in all fairness, I really don't know if that would, but it's a great question that we did not explore. We were able to move ahead because we were within a Novartis environment and were able to move ahead with our IT department that way.
Yeah. And I don't really have an answer to your question because number one, we haven't used it with field. And number two, at Moderna, we don't have the traditional field team structure that you think about in larger pharmaceutical organizations. Yeah, I will say though, in the case of Microsoft Teams, obviously you need a corporate device to be able to use, your corporate Microsoft Teams, unless you have, you're in an organization that allows you to bring your own device and kind of segment. Yeah,
I can set for our other clients a few thoughts. One is that if everybody has a personal device, it does limit what you can do via text message, right? Because there's privacy considerations, et cetera. We have many clients that do it. It's just a question of sort of what your IT team is comfortable with and what your privacy team is comfortable with as well, right? I think with the team's consideration, we found that this is actually, every IT team on the planet, if they've deployed Teams, they really want their field teams using Teams, and they want to switch that to be the internal communication tool. And what we found is that Arist has been an incredibly effective way to get field teams to use Teams. And the reason is because when you go to a field team or a commercial team and you're like, hey, you have two options. You can take this training via an e-learning on an iPad or a desktop, or you can take this via Teams chat. Everyone's going to say, I will happily do this via Teams chat instead. And it's a great way to get people comfortable with using Teams. So that's what we found. It's just a matter of sort of where your organization spends time. I think also, field teams are averse to Teams in the sense that they sometimes don't want to get like constantly bombarded by their manager or by other people. But the reality is that they're having the same conversations in Teams or in text either way, right? Every field team member on the planet is communicating somehow via a messaging tool. It's just a question of like, how do you distribute the right information between Teams, text, and email, and what is that balance?
Then what is your flow of work? Again, think about what is your flow of work. It may be different for you than other organizations.
Yeah. And it may be different from what you expect, right? I think what we found is that we've spoken to a lot of teams where they're like, yeah, we don't really use Teams chat. And then like in reality, like usage of Teams is maybe not ideal, but it's significantly higher than usage of your LMS. Pretty much any tool is going to have higher usage than your LMS. That's kind of the reality of it.
Even for our field teams, they do not embrace Teams. So that's why we did not use Teams at all. So we knew right off the bat that was not going to be the most effective way to reach our field teams. They do not embrace it. Even on the apps on their phones, they do not want to open up the Teams chat. Most of them silence their notifications, right? So we knew from day one that was just going to fail. So we embraced the SMS side of Arist. But we have a global team that we are working with at Novartis, and they are piloting Teams. They have much smaller sales teams, and they operate a little bit differently. So we're waiting to see the outcome of their pilot to see if we can learn from them. Like, what are they doing differently in Teams? Maybe we're missing over here. How are they engaging? So we are examining that as well.
Yeah. Other questions? Way in the back. Getting my jog in here.
So you said something really interesting to me before, and it was that you really need to evaluate your learning technology infrastructure. And I think all of us have probably in this room experienced that we have multiple tools across our organizations adopted by different teams. And so I would just love to hear how you guys embark on that process, start to finish, and make sure that the tools that you're selecting grow with you and are kind of future-proofed. And then the next step, right, is the buy-in from your IT arm of the organization. So a lot of times our arms within the sales and leadership organizations buy into the tool, and then we hit a roadblock with the IT part. So if you guys could kind of speak to that, probably very different perspectives given the size of your organizations, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I'll get started. And there's a lot that I cannot say, but what I can say is, as an organization, I think we're extremely fortunate that we're tech savvy, and everybody uses AI and everybody uses ChatGPT. We also train everybody on ChatGPT, and I'm not talking about the basic, here's how you go and prompt. We're teaching people how to create GPTs, right? So we're very far ahead when it comes to that. So for us, it made perfect sense to reevaluate the learning infrastructure from the lens of, okay, if everything is connected to ChatGPT and if everybody's using ChatGPT, can we just use ChatGPT as our learning platform, right? You will always need a learning management system, for tracking, and especially when it comes to compliance, and you do need a system of record in our industry, right? But what about everything else, right? Do I need to be sending people to the LMS to find a course on negotiation, or watch a video or a TED Talk, or can I do all that stuff from ChatGPT? And then can I also create mechanisms so that I can track data on what people are searching for? Are they getting the answers that they're looking for? Are they happy with what they're getting? And even, is there a way to be serving employees learning content that is found on the open internet rather than things that we subscribe to? Could we have a blacklist and a whitelist of, websites? And, if you're searching for something and I end up serving you content from Harvard Business Review, which is wide open, or YouTube, a TED Talk on YouTube, and people are happy with that, well, can we rethink about what we're paying for learning content libraries one day? And can we get to a point where our AI will be serving you chunks of learning content from different places, packaged as one thing? If you want to learn about something, can I give you 5 minutes of content that actually came from 5 different places? So that's where we're trying to go.
I would love to say that that's the way we do it at Novartis. But from the global Swiss company perspective, we have very strict governance. in terms of our IT infrastructure, what we can and can't do, and it's evolving. So it's actually a moving target we're finding at times, right? So we have an AI council that we do have to run by a lot of our programs, basically anything with AI in it, right? And I think it's pretty common now with most companies that we've been talking to that there is some governing body that needs to weigh in on any sort of generative AI content or anything that's being developed. We do also upskill on AI quite a bit. We hope to get, and we continue to grow internally, right, with our capabilities. But again, it's going to take some time. So I think in terms of our tech stack and our IT infrastructure, we have multiple LMSs. We have multiple places where people can get their learnings. So looking ahead and trying to plan for the future, we know that, what is sustainable? What does make sense? We don't want people going to 3 different places to get content. And even though the content itself is fantastic, is there a way that we can streamline and we can create pathways for people so they know, I want this, I'm going to go here for it. So we're getting there. We're not quite there yet. But just as you had mentioned, IT at times does stand in the way. It's a process. We're learning how to present our case, I think, also as a team when we want to throw out some new content. We're developing something new for the first time. So we've done a lot of networking with that team to find out what's the best way to do it. But for us, it's going to be a process. We're still growing in that area.
One thing that I'll mention is that, so 2 things to keep in mind. We've had an AI creation tool for 2.5 years in market. Most vendors release an AI creation tool in the past 3 months or have it on the roadmap for 3 months from now. What that means is that, and that's true for every single organization that we compete with, right? What that means is that if there's a 2-year delay in launching AI features, the vendor that you select ends up being the AI platform that you use. That means your organization will always be 2 years behind, right? And so keep that in mind when you're selecting vendors, right? I'm biased, obviously. I'm our CEO, but I think it's really critical, right? Because the reality is that if you are working with a company that is not AI native and that is not AI first, you're going to end up being behind just because of their inability to launch AI features quickly and because of their inability to rapidly test and iterate, right? The reality is that as a result, we've been able to launch features like AI referencing, AI image creation, AI infographic creation, et cetera, that most companies don't have on their roadmap for 3 years, right? And so the speed, the platforms that you select matter a lot in terms of your speed of AI deployment. The other thing is that if a company is, and if a vendor is genuinely AI native, it's actually way simpler from an infrastructure point of view, right? So getting IT approvals for AI native vendors is actually way, way easier than getting IT approvals for an LMS, just because these platforms are dramatically simpler from an infrastructure point of view. So that's sort of another consideration. The last thing that I'll mention is that we see the learning stack compressing a lot, based on what both of you said, to what we call push-pull practice, right? So you're always going to have the LMS and, will always exist as a compliance and data tracking tool. And then from our point of view, LLMs like ChatGPT will eventually overtake anything that somebody needs to pull, right? If I'm a rep and I want to pull information, I'm going to go into ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever my internal LLM is. With Arist, what we're focused on is the push component, right? Because that becomes a lot more valuable. How do you push the right learning to the right individual at the right time predictively? And then there's sort of the last piece, which is the practice component, right? How do you deliver coaching individually to reps using AI? And so that's kind of the learning stack that we see as the future. And we do think that, LLMs are going to kill content libraries, right? Even we've seen clients with Arist get rid of tools like Skillsoft and LinkedIn Learning because they don't need 40,000 courses when you can create the perfect course every single time, right? So that's sort of how we think about it. Folks, we are at time here. We have time for probably one more question. Okay, perfect.
I think I probably, yeah.
Sweet.
I guess I'm curious too. My image, they take in sort of routine this again and in explanation. So, we get a lot of other messages. They could follow it, or things that I knew about it, period.
Great question. So this is something that my team manages. And when we did see the uptake of Arist and people starting to jump on the bandwagon and seeing the great success, that was another piece of the puzzle that we had to figure out. And Arist did build for us a scheduler Basically, we see future scheduled programs in Arist. That way, from a planning perspective, we know we don't want leadership training being pushed out at the same time as immunology training, right? Because we know there's some crossover there. So let's wait a week and let's stagger that training. We have to do this right now outside of Arist, but for anything that's currently in motion, we do keep track of that as well, just to make sure any future planned programs that suddenly appear, we do get some last minute requests, that we can say and push back, we have a program going on right now that a lot of those learners are already in. We need to push that training back a little bit. So it's a combination of a tool that Arist has provided for us that we can look into the future and plan and know when those programs are going to be scheduled, complemented by what's going on today so that we can field those requests and have a good response for them and a recommendation of when we feel that training should go out.
Everything you said, plus one step at the very, very beginning. Just because you saw it and you love it and you want to launch this thing on microlearning, is this the right technology, the right time? So that's where I come in and just help my stakeholders, with everything else that we have going on, could this just be a PDF that people need to read really quick? Or is this like a call that you can have with your team? Does it need to be microlearning? So it's making sure that we're using it for the right thing. And again, it's me being very protective of how we're using the technology so that we don't get to a point where people perceive it as spamming.
Yeah. And let me just add on one quick thing too. So we've created an intake portal as well. So we do communicate that. So whenever commercial ops, sales leaders, our trainers, anybody wants to push through a new program, we direct them to a portal that we have created where they can put the details of what it is. So to your point, we can look at it and say, is this really something that should be pushed out in Arist, or can we make a recommendation to go through a different channel or postpone this for a little bit because we know something else is happening?
Yeah. One last thing that I'll mention is that, we've delivered, I think, like north of 5 or 10 million courses, right? So we have more data points than anybody else on like what the ideal cadence is, right? Like what is the right like cadence to not overwhelm people? And I think that matters a lot, right? Like there is an art to how do you deliver the right information and what is the cadence to not overwhelm people based on sort of their role and their title. And I think that becomes sort of really, really critical as well. So awesome, folks. Thank you so much for taking the time. A round of applause for Lisa and Greg.